Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, and this is episode number 466 of a show where you join me with my family on our small farm and homestead, where we talk about the 5 W's and how as we grow all around here on the homestead at York Meadow Farm. Now, in today's show, we are going to do a deep dive into a few different aspects of Christianity. That's right. Now, I understand that religion and spirituality are not the topics of choice for many people in the audience, but the reason I bring it up and we are doing a show about it today is because spirituality is part of a balanced life. And when we set goals in life, we are setting goals in financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. Those are the 7 aspects of life that are outlined in the goal setting workbook that I will link to in the show notes. And part of my own spiritual goals is the inclusion of increased dialogue about my own spiritual path. And that is what today's episode is all about. So, with that said, I would encourage you to keep an open mind with regard to today's show, because the purpose of today's show is, for me at least, is to obtain information and share what I'm learning with you. Okay, so personally, my own spiritual path has been long and arduous. I was born and raised in a family that was very active within the Roman Catholic faith. And I went to a Roman Catholic grade school, the very same school that my father attended. And I grew up in the very same town, along with my brothers and sisters, in the very same town that my father grew up in. My grandfather was very active in the church, and our family was also very active in the church. My parents sang in the choir. We really, it was a good childhood. I don't want to say anything negative about that, but by my late teens, I was done with it. I wanted to get away from the structure of everything. I was constantly fighting with my parents about not going to church, not wanting to go to church. And the deal was that was as long as I was, not an adult, that I would go to church. And then, as soon as I turned 18, well, I wasn't going to church anymore because I'm an adult. Right. So I didn't, for a couple of years. And then, like a lot of people, we go to college or we travel a little bit. We're in our early 20s. We find ourselves exploring things like Buddhism and such. And I certainly did, not very seriously, but, I like to talk about it and, pretend that I was into it. But I'll tell you what I really did latch onto in a big way was Taoism and a lot of the esoteric writings of various Taoist authors. And I got a big kick out of reading different translations of the Tao Te Ching specifically, and one of which my personal favorite translation of that is by an author named Thomas Cleary, I believe. And I'm going to try to link to everything that I'm talking about in the show notes today, but that's a great translation by Thomas Cleary. And I think that, no matter what, I'll make sure that I get I believe it's the Essential Tao. That along with anyways, I'll link to this in the show notes, but that was those were my big readings of choice in my early 20s. And then here and there throughout my 20s and 30s, I found myself trying to fill some kind of void in my life. Or, that's the only thing I can explain this as, because I was returning to church services of all denominations, even some Quaker Friends services down somewhere in the middle of Ohio. I was curious about that. So let's see what that's all about. Um, I was going everywhere, trying everything out, seeing what it was like, except I never attended any kind of Roman Catholic service again, because uh, you know, and I take that back. At one point, I did, and it wasn't so much that I attended a service; it was that I went there to talk with someone about this stuff. I think that it's important to talk to people when we're experiencing challenges in life, and if we're experiencing a challenge in some sort of, in this case, a spiritual aspect, then find someone to discuss this with. I don't know, like a it's always good to have a mentor or something like that, someone that you can bounce things off of, and that's what I attempted to do. But when I did so at this particular church where I was attending a Bible study, by the way, by Dr. Bill Creasy, who, again, I'll try to link to in the show notes. That is a fantastic Bible study for those of you who are interested in biblical studies. Why I thought Bill Creasy was such a fantastic, just quick side note, why I thought Bill Creasy was such a fantastic person to attend a Bible study with is because he was formerly a professor at UCLA, a tenured English professor, literature professor. And once he gained tenure, he chose the Bible as the text of choice to dissect and really began diving into that. And the way that he did it was through looking at it as a text, but also referencing timelines and maps and understanding how all the various stories within the Bible correspond with one another. And it's important to understand that that's what the Bible is. It's a collection of stories written by different people in different eras in different parts of the world that are compiled into this thing that we call the Bible, right? It's not just like some manuscript or something like that. So he did a real fantastic job of teaching this course, and it was, you know, from where I was living at that time in San Marcos, right in the like in San Elijo Hills, right near Carlsbad and Encinitas. This Bible study was at a local church in Carlsbad that was like 10 minutes from my house. So every week I was over there, studying with Dr. Creasy. And so I decided that, as I'm processing all of this, well, I was at the church anyways. So I made an appointment with someone there, and it turned out to be a nun. And I won't go into the details, but again, it was just another kind of unfortunate negative experience that I had within the Roman Catholic Church, and just left this unsavory taste in my mouth. So, ultimately, this episode today is not going to be about the promotion of any particular faith or denomination, right? That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to try to convert you to anything, quite frankly, but I am here to say that I am a Christian man. Full stop. I I am I guess they would call it a believer or whatever. I'm a Christian. I got that's kind of where it ends, right? And what's going to be discussed today is like my own particular walk of faith and where I'm at now, and that's a little bit of uh anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today is by my own particular walk of faith and where I'm at now with it. Now, I would encourage you to take your own walk of faith as well if you feel some sort of void within yourself. And I would also encourage you to consider reframing the way in which you think about your life and your goals. For example, instead of chasing your dreams and your passion, perhaps consider what God's purpose for you in this life is. And if you find the word God unsavory, then by all means, feel free to insert the word creator or universe into that statement. For I believe thinking outside of ourselves is the key to truly understanding ourselves. So, again, instead of chasing your dreams and your passions, think about what the Creator's purpose for you in this life is. Now, before we jump into the actual show, right? And the topic of today's show, which is Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox, oh my, let's take a moment to mention our show sponsors. All right, shall we? This show is brought to you in part by the homestead here at York Meadow Farm. And York Meadow Farm produces handcrafted batches of probiotic-rich fermented foods and natural bath and body products. Easy for me to say. The new online store allows you to order market fresh lacto-fermented foods and natural bath and body products scented with pure essential oils, I might add, from the convenience of your own home. That's right. No fragrance oils, only pure essential oils, nothing but quality in the bath and body products. You can order all of that from the convenience of your own home. There's also a new merch page that we're working on. And it's worth pointing out that listeners of the show receive 25% off all orders by entering the discount code all around growth at checkout. So please consider purchasing products that you are likely already using from York Meadow Farm for deep discounts with free shipping on orders over $45 and an additional 25% off with that discount code all around growth. All right. I'd also like to thank Food Forest Farms for the continued support of the show and for the assistance of providing a new video recording and streaming platform, which allows the show to reach a broader audience on YouTube and many other platforms. Many episodes are now in video form, and we are going to be performing a live stream every Friday moving forward. And this week's live stream is on Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I would encourage you to tune in for that. And what we're going to talk about on Friday is how the show has grown over the past few years. And the members of the Telegram group are encouraged to call in and talk about the change in development in their own lives over the past couple of years and share their experiences with all around growth in their lives. So you can join the Telegram group at t.me/all around growth and learn how you can participate in the live stream on Friday and be a part of the show. So check it out, t.me/all around growth. I'll be sharing more information on that today. And as far as Food Forest Farms is concerned, you can learn more about all of them and how they're making, well, not how they're making this happen, but they are making this happen. And you can learn more about them at foodforestfarms.com. They're a locally owned and operated, beyond organic, biointensive city farm and coffee roaster and more. Check everything out at foodforestfarms.com. And with the housekeeping taken care of, let's go ahead and get into the show, shall we? Now, we're going to cover a lot in this episode, and I'm going to try to link to everything that has been discussed and that I'm about to discuss in the show notes for your reference for those of you who are interested. Now, like I said, I was on a spiritual journey in my 20s and 30s. And in my mid to late 30s, I guess I just lost track of just about everything spiritual for a few years while chasing other people's dreams and not being mindful of my finances, not being mindful of my life, really. So 5 years ago, I stumbled into the spiritual journey again by way of Financial Peace University. I say stumbled because that was not my objective. My objective was to get out of debt. And since financial peace is part of the story, here's how all of this went down and ties into, my spiritual journey today. I decided to attend Financial Peace University in 2017, and I attended this course at a small church in a neighboring town of Wellington. And because that was kind of a haul, it was like probably a 25-minute drive over there. But I got a lot out of it, and I wanted to attend a course the next year as well. So in 2018, I attended a course locally at a church called Heartland Church. And then in 2019, I attended the same course again at Heartland Church. The people that put on the course, Joe and Jim, were great guys. As it turns out, I ended up taking some financial coaching from Joe Maines later down the road, who I fully endorse for financial coaching. He's a great guy, helped me out a lot. And at that time, I felt the good people there. And I that kind of brought back this calling and a return to go back to church, but not Heartland, not where I was attending that Financial Peace University, because I wasn't really interested in like the mega church vibe. And that's kind of what that church was. There's nothing wrong with that, but personally, that's just not what I was interested in. So I began exploring other churches, local churches. And one that I attended was the Medina UCC, the United Church of Christ Congregational, right there on the square in downtown Medina. That's been there for 200 years. And I had a great experience there. I went there once, and I filled out a little card in the pew, like one of those "I'd like to learn more" cards. And later that week, someone showed up here at the homestead with a warm loaf of bread. And I'm hesitating. And those of you listening can probably hear it in my voice that I'm getting a little emotional. In all of my experiences with a church, never had I felt so welcomed. Now, I wasn't here to receive this loaf of bread, but these ladies dropped it off while I was at work, and I got home shortly after, but it was still warm by the time I got home, and it was just a wonderful act that was performed in it, and it made me feel so welcome that I went back, and I continued to go back. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it there. I enjoyed everything about it, to the point where I even became a member for the first time in my adult life. I became a member of the church. I went out with the pastor. Shout out to Pastor Luke, and I understood he was a fan of microbrews, which I found interesting. And before I became a member, we actually shared a beer together. I believe it was at PJ Marley's in town, and I was just kind of feeling him out, asking him questions, telling him what my understanding of the Bible was, asking him what his understanding of the Bible was, and we really hit it off. Um, and I thought, oh, right, this is cool. I'm going to be I'm going to become a member of this church, and I did. And then I became active there. I went on to coordinate a Financial Peace University course in 2020. I decided that that was the best way to uh, have an accountability partner, the ultimate accountability partner, because if I found myself coordinating the course and promoting the course, the only seemingly proper way to do so was to fully engage in the very thing that I was promoting, right? So that's what I did. And within 3 months after the conclusion of my very first course that I coordinated, I was debt free after 3 years of grinding it out. It worked. And surprisingly, my all of this resulted in me being asked to serve as the interim treasurer due to the fact that the past treasurer had unexpectedly passed away. And I decided that there was a reason why this was happening, and I would go ahead and move forward with it. And I did exactly that. I served as an interim treasurer, and when I realized that the responsibilities were likely too much to shoulder in addition to everything else that I was taking on, I relinquished my responsibilities within the church as the treasurer, which actually worked out well because someone else on the council wanted to give up their position but still serve on the council, which the treasurer did. And that was actually, being on the church council and being an active member in the church was an interesting experience. I'd never done anything like that before. I'm very grateful for the experiences that I had, the relationships that were built and developed. It was just a wonderful experience with wonderful people. And but shortly after relinquishing my responsibilities within the church, I found myself seeking again, right? For landing in the church several years ago, initially it was because of Financial Peace University, but then I realized the benefit in participating in a church. And it was in 2019 when I actively began seeking membership in Medina UCC after exploring churches. And it was also that year where I began participating in a local volunteer organization, a local fraternal organization, in order to get more involved with my community. So after active involvement in paying off debt and building community and participating in the church and being an active member, I found myself longing for God. And it was right around that same time when I began attending different churches. And that is the backstory for the episode of today. Right? Because the very first church that I attended in March of 2022, March of this year, was an Orthodox church. And like I said, the title of today's show is Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox. Oh my. And, we're really going to dive into the differences between like the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, and then my experiences with the Orthodox Church, because that was the very first church service that I attended in March of 2022. I attended Divine Liturgy on March 13th. And it was such a powerful experience that all church services that I have attended since then have been Orthodox services, have been Divine Liturgy services at different Orthodox churches throughout the Northeast Ohio area, Cleveland, Akron area. So what I'm going to do is link to some basic Protestant church information, what Protestant churches are all about. But we're really going to dive into the differences between Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, and Orthodox, the Orthodox Church, right? Because, in the United States, we've really got the two camps of evangelicals and Protestants over here, and then the Roman Catholics over here, the Catholics and everyone else. That's kind of where we're at. And then there's like, you maybe know of someone or know of someone that knows someone that's Orthodox, but that's not really the majority in this country. Yet that is where I'm being drawn. And it's interesting. It was just, like I said, that experience at the very first Divine Liturgy was so intensely moving that I've continued to go back to Orthodox churches. Not only was it so intensely moving, but when I got there, the individual that was in there kind of greeting people as we walk into the church came up to me and gave me a little handbook and explained to me that the service wasn't going to be in English, but if I wanted to try to follow along, that the handbook was both in English and, I believe, Church Slavonic. And he also said that if I was interested in talking to the priest after the service, that could be arranged. And I said that would be nice. And the service was quite long. It was a longer service because, unbeknownst to me, that was the Sunday of Orthodoxy, and there was a lot going on later in the day, church activities and such. But even nevertheless, the priest came right to me afterwards, and we sat down after everyone departed and we talked. And he welcomed me in the warmest way that I'd ever experienced anywhere in my entire life. And I kept going back. And not only that, but the particular Orthodox church that I went to was a Russian Orthodox church, not only specifically like a Serbian Orthodox church. And I continued to explore many other Russian Orthodox churches for reasons that I don't fully understand. And I was continually drawn to the services that were in this old Church Slavonic, which is, as far as I can tell, akin to Roman Catholic masses being said in Latin. It's not. It's a language that's kind of dead and has been lost throughout generations. So I really understand very little of what's going on, but the service, although there are some pretty distinct differences between that and the old mass, which I'm accustomed to, which we attended growing up, there's enough similarities that I kind of understand what's going on and can just follow along with people when they stand and sit to not look like a complete fool. But nevertheless, let's take a look at and read and understand some of the differences between the Roman Catholic Church and just the Catholic Church in general, right? So I'm going to share an article, and I'm just going to read something from catholicsandcultures.org/Eastern Catholic Churches. I will link to this in the show notes as well. And this will be a much better way of explaining than me doing so in my own words. So let's go ahead and read this. The Catholic Church is actually comprised of 24 churches, one Latin or Roman church, which comprises perhaps 98% of all Catholics worldwide, and 23 Eastern or Oriental churches. All recognize the authority of the papacy, but within the parameters of a shared creed, each church has its own forms of liturgy, devotions, and traditions. Each has its own hierarchy under a patriarch or archbishop and distinctive Eastern legal canons. Liturgy is a defining aspect of these churches' identity. All of these churches embody traditions and practices that are at least a millennium old and are heirs to the original Christian tradition of a particular region. Many trace their origins back to the apostles or to apostolic times. The term Eastern is often interpreted to refer to the churches that grew out of the liturgy and traditions of ancient Church of Constantinople, capital of the eastern half of the Roman Empire. But it also extends beyond that to churches formed in communities from present-day Egypt through Syria, Iraq, Ethiopia, and India. Peter Brown summarizes, quote, "In the past 30 years, a scholarly revolution has altered our notion of the first 1,000 years of Christianity. Scholars have turned to Africa and Asia to discover ancient variants of Christianity whose vast, largely forgotten presence once dwarfed the fragile beginnings of the Catholic Church in Europe. We used to think that Christianity spread almost entirely in the Greek and Latin worlds. Now we realize that ancient Christianity was like a great comet. Its luminous trail once swept across the globe, from the Horn of Africa to the coast of Tamil Nadu, and from Mesopotamia to the court of the Emperor of China. Christian communities linked by tenacious networks of trade and diplomacy could be found in all those places. The Eastern Catholic churches discussed here are the Catholic descendants of these early churches. Orientalum Ecclesiarum, the Second Vatican Council's decree on the Eastern Catholic churches, asserts that the, quote, variety, close quote, that the Eastern churches represent, quote, within the church in no way harms its unity, rather it manifests it, close quote. All of the churches the decree reinforces are of equal dignity to each other and to the Western Church under the authority of the Pope. All are encouraged to preserve and develop both their liturgy and, quote, way of life, close quote. The story of these ancient churches' historic relations to Rome is complex. After the Great Schism between East and West of 1054, most of the churches were aligned with Orthodoxy. Beginning in the late 16th century, some clergy and members of those churches united with the Church of Rome. Today, all but two of these churches, the Maronite Church and the Italo-Albanian Church, have counterpart Orthodox churches. Each of the churches grew out of a particular geographic place and culture, and it has generally been tied to strong nationalist sentiment, though these churches has now spread globally to many parts of the globe. All right, here's where it gets interesting. The Eastern churches are generally grouped into 5 liturgical traditions, as far as I can tell, according to catholicsandcultures.org. We've got the Alexandrian liturgical tradition originating in Egypt, which involved the Coptic Catholic Church, the Eritrean Catholic Church, and the Ethiopian Catholic Church. And then we've got the Antiochian liturgical tradition originating in Antioch and West Syria, which involves the Maronite Church, the Syrian Catholic Church, and the Syro-Malankara Catholic Church. And then we've got the Armenian liturgical tradition, which involves the Armenian Catholic Church. Fourth, we've got the Chaldean or East Syrian liturgical tradition originating in Mesopotamia, which involves the Chaldean Catholic Church and the Syro-Malabar Church. And then we've got the Byzantine or Constantinople, easy for me to say, Constantinopolitan. Boy, that's a tough one. The Byzantine or Constantinopolitan liturgical tradition originating in Constantinople. And this is perhaps the largest of all of these various churches in these 5 different liturgical traditions. And these churches include the Albanian Catholic Church, the Belarusian Catholic Church, the Bulgarian Catholic Church, the Croatian Byzantine Catholic Church, or the Croatian Greek Catholic Church, the Greek Catholic Church, the Hungarian Catholic Church, the Italo-Albanian Catholic Church, the Macedonian Catholic Church, the Melkite Greek Catholic Church, the Romanian United Catholic Church with Rome, the Russian Catholic Church, the Ruthenian Catholic Church, the Slovak Catholic Church, the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. Now, again, we've got the Catholic Church consisting of 24 churches, one being the Roman Catholic Church, comprised of 98% of all Catholics worldwide, and these 23 other Eastern churches, right? Now, I was originally going to title the show something different, and the title of the show was originally going to be called Russian versus Byzantine versus Coptic versus Syrian Christianity and more. Because like I said, I've been attending Russian churches lately. But I have friends who have attended Byzantine churches in the past, and we talked about that recently, which got me thinking, well, what's the difference between the Byzantine and the Russian churches? And as far as I can tell, Byzantine Catholics keep Eastern liturgical practices, and many churches also pray the Divine Liturgy in Old Slavonic. But like the Roman Catholic Church, they accept the idea of the Pope as being the leader of the church, whereas the Orthodox churches do not. The Orthodox churches have a hierarchy that consists of spiritual fathers and elders, but there is no one pope. And my understanding of the Pope is that the Pope is the leader, the supreme infallible leader of the Catholic Church, and the Orthodox faith recognizes Christ as the leader of the church. And the reason Coptic and Syrian Christianity got thrown in the mix is because when I drive to the Orthodox church that I attend the most, I pass a Coptic Christian church on the way. And I was always curious about what that was. So I decided we'd just read briefly about that. Like, who are the Coptic Christians? And like, what's that all about? Now, Coptic Christians are an ethno-religious group indigenous to Northeast Africa who predominantly reside in the region of modern Egypt, where they are the biggest Christian denomination in the nation. Okay. So basically, the Coptic Christians are the Orthodox from what's now known as Egypt. That's it. No big deal, right? So up at the Tremont Farmers Market recently, where we were in October, right down the road from the market, like right across the street, literally, there's this one church that's called the Syrian Orthodox Church. And I think I don't remember the name of the church, but I thought, what's the Syrian church? And as we just read, the Syrian church falls under the Antiochian liturgical tradition originating in Antioch and West Syria. Okay. So the Orthodox churches, right? Just to share a little bit about the Orthodox Church, I'm just going to go ahead and read from the same source that I read about the Coptic Church. And this is from Christianity.com. What is the Orthodox Church? History and beliefs of Orthodoxy. Orthodox definition and meaning. Orthodox. Of a person or their views, especially religious or political ones, or other beliefs or practices, conforming to what is generally or traditionally accepted as right or true, established and approved. Orthodoxy is belief or adherence to traditional or affirmed creeds, notably in religion. In the Christian sense, the term means, quote, conforming to the Christian faith as represented in the creeds of the early church, close quote. The first 7 ecumenical councils were between the years of 325 and 787 AD, with the purpose of establishing accepted doctrines. In historic Christian use, the word orthodox relates to the collection of doctrines that were accepted by the early Christians. Several ecumenical councils were gathered over a period of several centuries in an attempt to establish these doctrines. The most notable of these historic declarations was that between the Homoousian doctrine, which became Trinitarianism, and the Heteroousian doctrine called Arianism. The Homoousian doctrine, which characterized Jesus as both God and man, with the canons of the 431 Council of Ephesus, won out in the church and was referred to as orthodoxy in most Christian purposes, since this was the understanding of early Christian church fathers and was confirmed at the ecumenical councils. The next section reads about the history of the Orthodox Church. Although originally the Eastern and Western Christians shared the same faith, the two sides began to separate after the Seventh Ecumenical Council in 787 AD and are generally considered to have ultimately divided over the dispute with Rome in the so-called Great Schism in 1054, which is linked to in this article. Particularly, this occurred over the papal claim to supreme authority and the doctrine of the Holy Spirit. The split became definitive with the failure of the Council of Florence in the 15th century. Yet, in the determinations of majority Orthodox, a crucial significance was the conquering of Constantinople in 1204 during the Western Christian Fourth Crusade. The sacking of Constantinople by the Crusaders eventually led to the loss of this Byzantine capital to the Muslim Ottomans in 1453. Following the 1054 Great Schism, both the Western Church and Eastern Church continued to consider themselves uniquely Orthodox and Catholic. Augustine wrote On True Religion, quote, "Religion is to be sought only among those who are called Catholic or Orthodox Christians, that is, guardians of the truth and followers of right," close quote. Over time, the Western Church gradually identified with the quote, Catholic label, and people of Western Europe gradually associated the quote, Orthodox label with the Eastern Church. In some languages, the Catholic label is not necessarily identified with the Western Church. And on a side note, as I read in the Handbook of Divine Liturgy, they make this very clear about the translations into English and the difficulty in translating the word Catholic from Greek and Old Slavonic and other languages. There's controversy over the best translation of the word Catholic into English, whether the accurate translation of the word is actually Catholic or universal. But that's maybe another discussion for another time. Back to the article. This was a note of the fact that both Catholic and Orthodox were in use as ecclesiastical adjectives as early as the 2nd and 4th centuries, respectively. Now, belief and worship of the Orthodox Church. Eastern Christianity emphasizes a way of life and belief that is manifested especially through worship. By preserving the conventional method of worshiping God passed on from the very beginnings of Christianity. Eastern Christians maintain that they acknowledge the true doctrine of God in the right or orthodox way. The Bible of the Orthodox Church is that of most Western churches, except that its Old Testament is based not on the Hebrew, but on the ancient Jewish translation into Greek called the Septuagint. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The wisdom of the fathers of the church is fundamental to the Orthodox way of life, as today's successors of the, quote, true faith and church, close quote, passed on in its most authentic form. By maintaining the virtue of the received teachings of the apostles, followers are more conscious of the inspiration of the Holy Spirit being present both in history and in the modern day. Fasting and prayer represent an essential part of the Orthodox Christian life. Orthodox believe that fasting can be, quote, foundation of all good, close quote. The discipline of withholding food from the body can empower a believer to focus the mind completely on preparing for prayer and spiritual matters. There are 4 central fasting periods: the Great Fast, or the period of Lent, the Fast of the Apostles, which is 8 days after Pentecost until June 28th, which ends with the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul. The Dormition Fast begins on August 1st and ends on August 14th. And the Christmas Fast begins on November 15th and goes through December 24th. Now, the Orthodox Easter, or Pascha, Easter is the most meaningful and holy season of the Orthodox Church calendar. Orthodox Easter primarily commemorates the resurrection of Jesus Christ with a series of celebrations or movable feasts. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity, the spiritual preparations begin with Great Lent, 40 days of introspection and fasting, including Sundays, which starts on Clean Monday and finishes on Lazarus Sunday. Again, in this article, guys, there are many embedded links if you are interested in reading this and learning more about what it is that I'm talking about here. According to learnreligions.com, Clean Monday falls 7 weeks before Eastern Sunday. The term, quote, Clean Monday refers to cleansing from sinful behavior through the Lenten fast. Lazarus Sunday occurs 8 days before Easter Sunday and signifies the end of Great Lent. Next comes Palm Sunday, 1 week before Easter, commemorating the triumphal entry of Jesus Christ into Jerusalem, followed by Holy Week, which ends on Easter Sunday, or Pascha, or Pascha, however that's pronounced. Fasting continues throughout Holy Week. Many Orthodox churches observe a Paschal Vigil, which ends just before midnight on Holy Saturday or Great Saturday. The last day of Holy Week is the evening before Easter. The Orthodox Creed, or the symbol of faith, is as follows. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible, and in one Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the only begotten, begotten of the Father before all ages, light of light, true God of true God, begotten, not made, of one essence with the Father, by whom all things were made, who for us men and for our salvation came down from heaven, and was incarnate of the Holy Spirit and the Virgin Mary, and became man. And he was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate, and suffered and was buried. And the 3rd day he rose again, according to the Scriptures, and ascended into heaven, and sits at the right hand of the Father. And he shall come again with glory to judge the living and the dead, whose kingdom shall have no end. And in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father, who with the Father and the Son together is worshipped and glorified, who spoke by the prophets, in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I acknowledge one baptism for the remission of sins. I look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen. And to conclude this article, it lists the Orthodox churches in America. And the following list includes the largest Eastern Orthodox jurisdictions within the United States, which are as follows. The American Carpatho-Russian Orthodox Diocese, the Antiochian Orthodox Christian Archdiocese of North America, the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, the Orthodox Church in America, the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, and the Serbian Orthodox Church in the USA and Canada. So at this point in time, as of November 16th, 2022, We are almost an hour into this episode titled Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox, oh my. And first of all, I'd like to thank those of you who have continued to listen up to this point. I understand that there was not much discussion about Protestantism and Roman Catholicism. But like I said, my own personal spiritual path has led me to the exploration of the Orthodox Church, specifically the Russian Orthodox Church and the Serbian Orthodox Church, which I have attended with the most frequency of all the Orthodox churches, Russian Orthodox churches. I have not really gone out of my way to learn much about the differences between the Orthodox faith and the Western Catholic faith up until this point, quite frankly. The reason I am doing so is because I am passionate about learning more. And like I said, this episode was not about, and I hope that it didn't come across in this way, but I'm not here to promote any particular faith or denomination. And nor am I here to promote Christianity, for that matter. I'm not here to convert you. That's not my objective. I'm not here to evangelize or do anything of that nature. And if this episode came across in some sort of preachy or evangelical way, I apologize. That was not my intent. But like I said, my objective was to simply share with you the information that I'm obtaining to satisfy my own curiosity on some of the differences between the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, and also the Byzantine Church, because that was something that came up in conversation just a couple of days ago with my friends Guy and Terry as I went over to Guy's place to play some tunes on Sunday. And we got to talking about that, and it was just a wonderful discussion, and it really got me thinking about all of this again. So hopefully, for those of you who did listen, you found this to be of value and benefit. And if you are interested in learning more, then I will most certainly link to everything that was discussed in the show notes. And I would encourage you to check out those links if you are curious in learning more about everything that was discussed in the episode today, as well as the show sponsors, York Meadow Farm and Food Forest Farms. So with that, guys, I appreciate you being here with me again today, and I look forward to catching you in tomorrow's episode, where we will be talking about the Appalachian String Band Music Festival, otherwise known as Clifftop. And I will be attending that next year in 2023, one of the first of few big commitments that big events that I've committed to. And Friday, we will again be doing a live stream at 10 o'clock Eastern time on YouTube. And I will link to that in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so that you can be reminded for the live stream and chime in with comments. And if you're in the Telegram group at t.me/allaroundgrowth, you will know how to join in the show and participate and be a part of it as we talk about the growth and development of the show over the past few years, growth and development of your life, and how we're all changing and what the plan is moving forward. So I look forward to all of that Thursday, Friday, and wherever else the future takes us together. Until next time, guys, this is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.